Today we are making these Northern Lights letter keychains. I am using mica colors from Black Diamond Pigments in Black Onyx, Blue Slate, Blue Green, and Fluorescent Green that I mix with glow powder. For this project, I use a 2-part resin as well as UV resin. I like the J-Diction hard type one as it cures really nice. You will also need an alphabet mold where the letters are the correct way up, not backwards. I like my colors really nice and bright, so I use quite a bit of pigment in my resin. This is the reason why I use a 2-part resin, because if you use UV resin, it's not going to cure properly with this much pigment in it. I often get asked how I make my glow-in-the-dark so bright. I use this neon green pigment from Black Diamond. It is not a mica pigment, it's an actual powder pigment, so it's quite chalky and thick. I use just a little bit of that, it brightens everything up, and I use a lot of glow powder. This particular glow powder is from New Classic Resin, but you can find lots of different ones online, and in my Amazon shop I have a few different options in there as well. So I always start with the black for the dark night sky and just do a little tiny bit right at the top of each letter. Next comes the blue, same idea, just a little tiny bit on each side. Now we are not filling these molds all the way up to the top because we still need room for other layers. Then the blue-green is next. Once I have those 3 colors in, I use a tool or a toothpick or whatever you have on hand, and I just kind of blend them a little bit, just so that they don't look so stripy. Once those are blended, I go in and I just add a little bit of that neon glow-in-the-dark green to fill in the bottom section. Once I've got all my letters filled in with all the colors, then I grab a toothpick or a little tool, a little scooper tool, whatever you have. Everybody's got different stuff. And I take little drops of the glow-in-the-dark green and I just sort of pull it through into the sky in a squiggly pattern. We're trying to make the Northern Lights here, so you can use your creative freedom, do them however you like. Sometimes I play around with it a bit until it looks how I would like it to look. Each letter is a little different. The way the mold will pull the colors down changes for each letter. So just get creative, swirl things around, make some Northern Lights. Once you have your desired look, these now are going to sit for 24 hours and cure for the next layer. So for painting trees, I use acrylic paint. This is my preferred paint, and a tiny little paintbrush. Now you can do trees however you like. I just kind of go in. It's not that easy because this is little, so a little tiny paintbrush, just sort of doing a little swipe back and forth to make the appearance of a fir tree. You can do any tree, you could change this up and do a silhouette of something else. I'm putting just little trees in here, little silhouettes, and again, use your creative freedom and do what you like. Once all the silhouettes are painted, we're going to go in for a second layer with the 2-part resin again. Now the reason we're doing 2-part is because we're going to do more glow-in-the-dark color, and I just find it cures better. So we mix up some more resin and we're going to make a little tiny bit of that glow-in-the-dark green again. Nice and bright. So remember what we did, we put in a little bit of the neon green and a lot of the glow pigment. As I mentioned earlier, I always get asked how I make my glow colors so bright. Well, this is how. I add a lot of pigment. I know a lot of people worry that if you add too much, it's going to ruin the resin, and I have not had that be the case. So I put quite a bit, and I get a really nice bright color. So next step is we're going in with the clear. We're going to do a layer of clear resin on all of these. I'm super messy doing this. I've seen other people in their videos and they do this really neat. I'm a bit messy. It's not a big deal. You can spread this out after. You always get some on the mold. I find if you wipe it off, it's never a problem. I do go in and spread it out a bit just to make sure that it's filling the whole mold right up to the corners. Don't want to leave any little pockets with nothing in there or it will be a problem later. So you don't want to use heat on your resin molds or you're going to end up ruining them if you use too much heat. So I sometimes just come in with a little spritz of rubbing alcohol to get rid of those bubbles, and it evaporates fairly quickly, taking some of those little bubbles with them. And here comes the next step. With that neon green that glows, we're just going to go in like we did in the first step, and we're going to swirl that through the clear. Again, using your creative freedom, you can do this however you like. I play around with them. Each letter is different, as I mentioned, and just get creative. You don't need a lot of the green. You can just do a little drop on either a toothpick or a tool, as I've mentioned, and just kind of swirl a little bit through. You can feather things out, swirl them. The whole point is to have those lovely aurora in the sky. Now again, we have to let these cure for another 24 hours and we will come back tomorrow to do the final stages. For the finishing step, you need to take them all out of the mold now that they have fully cured. Oftentimes they get little lips on them, little sharp edges. I use a deburring tool and I like to go along the edges just to kind of take those little sharp edges off. Now, a lot of people find a deburring tool a little tricky to use. It can take some getting used to. So if it's not your thing, you don't like the way the head swivels, then you can also go in with some sandpaper or even a nail file, like one of the little emery board ones, and go over top of those corners and edges, just making them a little less sharp, because when we dome these, if you don't do that to the edges, some of them will stick up a little bit and your piece won't come out quite as nice. So I like to call this cleanup before the final step. If you do use a file or sandpaper to sand these down, don't forget to wipe the dust off at the end because you don't want that floating around in your final coat of resin. So again, the UV resin that I really like is the J. Diction hard type, and we're just going to dome these. So we go over top with a clear coat, just put a little bit. It will kind of spread itself out and fill in that top layer. And I take a little tool and I just sort of bring the resin out to the edges just to make sure that there is coverage all over the entire top. At this stage, feel free to use a torch to get the bubbles out. You're no longer in a mold here, so you're not going to wreck your mold. And then we hit them with the UV light. Once cured, we're going to use a teeny tiny little drill bit and put a hole in the top. Now, this drill bit came with a handheld gadget that I got off of Amazon, and it wouldn't hold the bit in, so I put it in my regular drill. Once you have the hole in there, you're going to attach your little pieces. I use my hands to screw these in because I found that if you use pliers, they often will snap off because the pliers are too strong. So I just used my fingers. And then you can literally add any kind of hardware you like. I'm making these into key rings. You could turn them into some other sort of tassel. The choice is yours. Again, use your creative freedom. My daughter wanted keychains, so we're making keychains. And there you have it, the Northern Lights resin keychains. Would love to see your take on this project if you decide to do them, or if you decide to change something up and make them your own.